Well, thank you so much for speaking to us. Ashwin, congratulations. You finally managed to get it into the theatres.
Yes.
You and Censor Board have had this long-standing relationship. What is it about?
Well, besides the fact that there is an impulse to try and stem or stamp down on general freedoms of speech. When you give, let's say, a chowkidar a lathi, the obligation to use it is very tempting. Really, it's not an obligation. The temptation to use it is very high. Unfortunately, what censorship ends up doing is it distances us from the realities and truths of that which is being attempted to be quietened down or not brought into the limelight, which creates demonic, fearful figures of people that we would like to have or we would like to acknowledge as our own citizens. In Dehradun, for example, that we saw Kashmiri students being packed up into buses and sent back home is a direct result of censorship, actually, because it is the misconception over the past 30 years. It is the mythology that has been created of the Kashmiri jihadi militant or the Kashmiri stone pelter, which has sort of seized popular imagination. And this is because of censorship. Because if there was a counter-narrative which was allowed to be presented, it would certainly be a more nuanced view, as we have for the rest of the country, where people, where the land is not looked upon as a piece of property, where the people belonging to the land also are extended the benefit of doubt. We know so little, in fact nothing, about the daily lives of the people there. So I think censorship is not about, of course it is impinging on Article 19A, which is freedom of speech, expression, and my artistic freedoms to express myself, but that is really almost secondary in this debate. What is most important is the misimpression, the sort of misinformation that is constantly being churned out by media and by state propaganda across to the rest of the country, so that people here really have a deeply flawed view of what the issues are that people in Kashmir are facing.
And now finally the movies in the theatres is to both of you is in this politically volatile climate where people watch this movie objectively.
Some will and some won't. But I think it couldn't have come at a better time. So by default, because of this whole censorship delay that's happened, our movie has now just actually, time to come out just before the elections. And I think that's a very good thing for a film like this and for an audience to be able to watch a film like this at a point when, they're going to start making decisions about what and whom what they want to vote for, actually.
We last saw you in Razi with your daughter, which was a spy thriller set in Kashmir again. Now we are doing this film. Also, the perception of mainstream cinema, also we've had movies like Uri. How different is it? Do you think we are also try to stereotype things?
Well, I think we're in an era now where, patriotism has become practically a badge you're supposed to wear on your sleeve. And that doesn't mean to say that movies like Uri shouldn't be made, or, I'm not even implying that. It was a very well-made film. But I'm just saying that when that's the only narrative you're putting out there, then it kind of begets the question, are you trying to control the narrative? And I think that is why censorship is objectionable, is because it obviously is being used by people, whoever it may be. I'm not saying this government or that government. I'm saying any government that comes into power and is linked to the censor board is always going to have this tool in their hands to be able to use as they want to, and that is, I think, the tragedy, and that is what needs to change.
And also, Ashwin, you're bent towards making controversial subjects. What gives you the impetus to, basically on the stories that you've made? Little Terrorists, the Inshallah football. So what basically is that driving force?
This word controversy is very interesting. I am expressing myself as a freedom, as a citizen of this country, and I'm trying to highlight certain problems in the spirit of trying to get institutions to self-correct. Now, when the institutions are not self-correcting, you have, people like me step in, people like you step in, the media should be stepping in, but that unfortunately is not happening, which is where the word controversy starts coming in. You see, things should not be controversial because all we are trying to do is just putting out what we perceive and what we see. The controversy arises because someone's trying to stop you. You see, if there was no stoppage, then there would not be a controversy. Little Terrorist, of course, there was no controversy around it. I mean, it has a U certificate and it flew through because I mean there was no problem. Inshallah Football, Inshallah Kashmir was my first round 1 and round 2 with my tryst with the Indian Censor Board. You see, the reason I wrote No Fathers in Kashmir the way I wrote it is a story, rather endearing, I think, story of two teenagers falling in love with each other and then having their first sort of heartbreak. It's a sort of moment that we all recall of being in our teens and liking the guy or the girl in our class or in our school and sort of having this and thinking that they mean the world, and then suddenly something happens and then that whole sort of edifice crumbles and you realize this whole love and falling in love business is a little more complicated than than it has actually been purported. It doesn't quite play out as it does in magazines and television and shows. And that sort of reality check, is a coming of age moment, right? Of course, there's another coming of age moment in the film, which is the girl coming of age, But in Kashmir, when two teenagers try to do that, they end up doing it in the context of trying to locate their disappeared fathers. You can see the entire conceit, if you like, becomes that much deeper and more tragic. Because this love affair, if you like, unspools against this quest of trying to find disappeared fathers, which in itself is such a deeply tragic moment in anyone's life. And the bond between a father and a daughter, of course, is a very special bond. And this child, of course, has never had it. So there is the tragedy of the journey, and yet there is the irreverence, the cockiness, the mischievousness, the exuberance, if you like, of youth. This film speaks to the millennial. It's made for the millennial. It is made so that people of that generation can start identifying with the daily lives of Kashmiri youth who are today vilified, demonized. Kids as young as 8 and 14 are incarcerated in jails in Kashmir. Their eyes are gouged out because of pellets. These are realities that we need to face rather than run away from and hide from.
And ma'am, what was the reason that you said yes to it? And my second question, why don't we see you very often on screen? Two questions in one.
I'll answer your second question first, is only because I think there are only that many roles for women my age, and so it's not like there are there's a glut of roles and coming in, pouring in, and it's for all actors my age. It's not just for me. So there are just that many films to go around, and that's the way it is. As to the reasons why I did this film, well, when I read the script, what really struck me about the script was that it's written by somebody who knows Kashmir very intimately, and it's something that I had not experienced before, because we've had many films coming out of Kashmir and some of them have been really good, but there has always been something, for me, always something lacking, and that is the connection with the actual Kashmiri people. I've always found that aspect of it slightly superficial. And here was a script which came to me, which I really, I started firstly learning a lot from the script, from the story. It took me into a space in which I was familiar, yet I wasn't. And at the same time, I think it was just so charmingly written. So it was very clever, it was humorous, there was this love story, it was irreverent, it was a lot of things rolled into one, and was therefore very engaging. And so I said, I would just love to be a part of this project. It was that was my sentiment.
Also, Ashvin, the fact that now you've written about Kashmir, it's a movie that people should watch because it's a part of your country, but then there is also this one whole section that feels they're separate from us, and then also the perception in the news is also to be blamed, and since people attach to their phones the kind of stories, do you think this movie is going to help people realize and see another facet of...
Well, thank you for saying that people attach to their phones, because that's exactly what I intend to deploy. I mean, Uncle Google to the rescue. People watch this film and say, this guy is no, this is not right. I want that skepticism. I want people to think that what I've said perhaps is not correct, but when they do Google it, they will find out. There's enough material available on the internet if people want to find out and see exactly what's happening. I mean, unlike the time that I went to make this film, for example, there was precious little, and I'm talking about 10 years ago. In the last 10 years, there's been enough information put out on the internet for people to go and research and find out if they really want to know what is happening in Kashmir. So this skepticism is something that I'm banking on, in fact, and not. People will receive the film that they will. I mean, look, I'm very well aware of the public sentiment today in our country. I know that it's not receptive towards counter narratives. I know that there is perhaps we have been the most intolerant in the last 70 years, as we have in the last 2 or 3 years, that we have. But this is precisely the reason why you need narratives like this to come out. I mean, we need to put our foot down. We need to stop allowing the narrative to be hijacked by forces that are trying to divide the country. They're trying to divide the country on the basis of religion, trying to divide the country on the basis of the food that we eat, and so on and so forth. We need narratives that express humanity, that tell the truth, and hopefully through that truth and through that humanity, you might end up with some sort of solution. And I think the solution for Kashmir, frankly, if I might also add, will come from the youth of the rest of India. You see, all the other stakeholders are far too trapped in their histories. And they have been too trapped in their histories, whether it's the politicians sitting in Delhi, whether it's the separatists sitting in Kashmir, and even if it's whether it's the kids who are throwing stones, are too trapped in their histories or just unable to, due to force of circumstance, to do anything about the situation. Start creating narratives for the young people of India. Not just my own film, but many, many other films, I hope.
And also, ma'am, you belong to the film industry also. We do see a lot of young people, they're vocal, they're doing movies that, as they say in the Hindi film language, hatke. Do you see a churning, a change happening in the industry? Your husband is the filmmaker, your daughter is a superstar. Do you see that churn happening?
Absolutely. I think there's no disputing that. There is a seismic shift in the kind of movies that we are making today than, for example, we were making 10 years ago. And every time, every year, I think 1 or 2 films come along that kind of set a benchmark for the next level and the next level. So I think that's what's wonderful. Nothing happens overnight. It happens step by step. And I think the steps are they're very, very clearly, sort of outlined for if you can sort of do your research. So, there are now, films written just for women, or, women in pivotal roles or main roles, which didn't happen earlier. And there are films made on anything and everything. I mean, you can pick up any subject today and make a film. And if you just do a great job of it and you write a good script, you'll get it through, you'll get it passed. Plus, I think what's really good is that there are a lot of female filmmakers who are now just coming into their own or have already come into their own, which again, 10, 15 years ago, they were still struggling. So there are huge shifts, I mean, in so many different ways.
So is movie filmmaking easier now, or was it easier during your time?
Depends what kind of film you wanted to make. And every era, I think, throws up its own set of challenges. There was a time in between when films were not doing well because of television, and then there were no digital platforms, so we were having a terrible time marketing everything and making any money at all. There was a time when there was no money. Everybody, we had to go to these money lender type of chaps, and they were paying 36% interest, which killed you. You never made any profit. You just made enough money to run your kitchen, literally. I mean, for years. So it's only when the big guys came in, the big players came in and funded films, and we got profit margins, and we got all those things worked into the back end. That is when the business changed.
Lastly, which was the best film that you watched recently that actually impacted you both? Or you enjoyed thoroughly?
Gully Boy, just because that's the last film I watched in the theatre. Yeah.
And Alia,
and also not just because. Gully Boy, because it's a fabulous film. I loved it. I mean, it was, apart from Alia, who was very good in it, of course. But the whole film, I mean, I think it was just a
question of Alia,
very remarkable film.
Very true. But your daughter, I mean, she's just amazing. You would be proud, but did you always see there was an inherent star in her, an actor in her?
No. I knew she wanted to be an actress. I didn't know whether she'd be good at all. She didn't know. I mean, nobody knew. Nobody knew what she may be capable of or anything. That was just something that, and it wasn't that she was, the first film or whatever. She was suddenly from 0 to 90 or whatever. She's also grown with every role that she's done. But the wonderful thing is that she's been offered those roles, and she's got a chance to play them, and she's obviously got the mettle to be able to invest in those roles and do a fabulous job. So more power to her.
And her choices, does she discuss her film choices with you or
Not really, no, not really. She a little bit sometimes here and there. We hardly have time to talk. Yeah, it's like she's too busy. Yeah.
So Ashvin, which was the best film that you watched recently?
This best and worst is very difficult.
Yeah.
My memories
Okay,
become.
a movie that you were like, you know, sometimes you walk out of a theater and you think about a film. Otherwise, usually you walk out and you're just like, you just forgot.
I don't mean to divert the conversation, but honestly, all I have been doing for the last 9 months is
Yeah, you can't blame her.
is learning how to battle the censor board.
So before that, you also watched some movie.
Okay, I'll tell you an all-time favorite. Perhaps also an inspiration for something like this. I love films that show the world through kids' eyes. So Cinema Paradiso is one of
Oh
them.
yeah,
Oh, lovely. Yeah.
And there's a wonderful Iranian film by Abbas Kiarostami called Where Is My Friend's Home? And it's a charming little film about a little boy trying to find his friend and give him his school book back. So films that are very, very simple but tell are hugely metaphoric in political narrative, for example. In a place like Iran where you're not allowed to talk and not to say anything, you know, to come up with a film like that and you can just read behind the lines, you know. So subversion using narrative in cinema is a favorite. Yeah.
Thank you so much, and ma'am, I hope we'll see you more often now, and hope it's a star. Thank you for getting her on screens.
Well, it was a pleasure to have Soni ma'am on screen. I mean,
So was she like instant? She was like the character that, you know, sometimes when you write a character, you're like, this is the actor I want.
no, not. I wouldn't quite put it like that. Soni ma'am and I had a bit. I mean, she was my Facebook friend. She reached out to me before the film was really cast or anything like that. I shared the script with her without any sort of conditions as per. I mean, I wasn't approaching her, and nor was she. So when we met, I expressed skepticism about her being part of the film and the role that she. And then I requested her to audition, so she did. And hats off to her, because that won me over immediately. I was just like, you know, if Soni Razdan is ready to audition, I better sit up and get my game together and see what is there, you know. And even then, you know, it took me a while to finally make up my mind about, you know, it was, sorry.
Directors don't want to cast.
Yeah.
Come on now.
On the contrary, I must say that I write films for women. I find women far more interesting than men. In terms of characters and also in generally in terms of, you know, I mean, I have far more women friends than I have male friends. I find the day-to-day experiences that they have to go through so much more interesting, you know, and the kind of pulls and pressures that they have to deal with a smile on their faces, you know, so much more moving, really, to set. So I love writing female characters, yeah. So maybe there's another opportunity for us to work together.
Hope so.
Yeah.
Really, that was so cool.
Like, I had spoken to your husband when he said, oh, I don't cast stars, when I asked him the DP, working with Alia. Now he's doing that. So will we see a family outing? Maybe you also become
I
part.
can't, because I was in Sadak 1 and I died in that film. Bhul gayi kya? I died in all my husband's films. He just killed me off. My children grew up seeing their mother being killed in every movie.
But did Alia grow up watching your films? And what was
No, not my films as such. She watched films. She grew up on a rich diet of all kinds of things. I never censored my kids' taste or watching this thing. So she used to watch all those horrible serials. Sorry, pardon my... all those lovely serials. Please, I did that. All those serials. And she used to tell me everything. I said, what are you watching, Alia? Oh, now that man, no, he doesn't like this lady. And he's married to that lady. You should give me a whole explanation. I'm horrified. Like, what is my child watching?
Wow, that's interesting.
Yeah. Then cut to Sex and the City. Yeah.
Wow.
Quick.
Well, thank you so much. And well, thank you for bringing this film to us, and more power to you. And I hope the battle lines with the censor board are now done and dusted.
I hope so.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, ma'am.